It is rarely the person who cared the least who walks away. It is the one who tried the hardest, the one who stayed past the point of comfort, the one who kept choosing patience when everything felt uncertain, the one who gave chance after chance, hoping something would finally change. That is the part most people miss. The strongest effort often ends in a quiet exit, and that truth carries a deeper story that few people truly understand. There is a hidden pattern behind it, one that unfolds slowly over time, beneath the surface, where emotions build and silent decisions take shape. Most people believe that leaving means a lack of love or commitment. The reality is far more complex. The person who tries the hardest goes through a process that is rarely visible from the outside. It is a journey filled with internal conflict, repeated hope, and a gradual shift that happens long before the final step is taken. There are small moments, almost invisible, where something begins to change, a thought that lingers longer than usual, a feeling that no longer fades, a realization that quietly grows stronger with time. These moments shape the decision in ways that words often fail to explain. In this video, you will understand why the person who gives the most is often the one who eventually leaves. You will see the emotional stages they go through, the silent signals that appear before the end, and the deeper psychological truth behind their decision. There are lesser-known patterns that reveal how effort can slowly turn into exhaustion and how care can transform into clarity. Once you see these patterns, it becomes impossible to unsee them. You will begin to recognize the difference between fighting for something and losing yourself in the process. This is not just about relationships, it is about human behavior, emotional limits, and the point where strength shifts into self-respect. There is a reason why the quietest exits often come from the strongest people, and by the end of this video, that reason will become clear. Stay with this until the end because the final insight will change the way you see effort, attachment, and the true meaning of walking away. Welcome to our channel. If you want to understand human behavior on a deeper level and see the patterns most people overlook, make sure you subscribe and stay connected for more videos like this. There is always that one person who keeps holding everything together when things start to fall apart. The one who quietly steps in to fix what is broken, even when it was never their responsibility in the first place. They listen longer, they forgive faster, and they carry more than they ever show. When tension rises, they choose calm. When problems appear, they search for solutions. And when something hurts, they soften it with understanding, often saying it is okay, even when it clearly is not. Their effort becomes a routine, something expected rather than appreciated. They do not walk away after the first mistake. They pause, they reflect, and they give another chance. When the same issue happens again, they stay. They try to explain, they try to adjust, and they try to make things work in ways that slowly stretch their own limits. It does not stop there. They remain through repeated patterns, through promises that fade, and through moments that quietly take more from them than they realize. They stay and stay and stay even when something inside them begins to feel different. There is a reason behind this kind of patience. It comes from a belief that things can improve, that people can grow, that situations can turn around with enough care and effort. They focus on what could be rather than what is right in front of them. They see potential in places where others might only see patterns. That potential keeps them invested, keeps them hopeful, and keeps them choosing to remain present even when it becomes difficult to ignore what is actually happening. At the same time, their understanding becomes deeper with every experience. They begin to notice small details, shifts in tone, repeated behaviors, and unspoken signals that others might overlook. They do not react immediately. Instead, they absorb, process, and give more space than most people would. From the outside, it can look like endless patience. From the inside, it feels like a constant balancing act between hope and quiet discomfort, between holding on and slowly questioning how long they can continue this way. From the outside, people often misread this kind of behavior. They see someone who keeps staying, keeps forgiving, keeps giving chances, and they come to a quick conclusion. They think this person is weak. They assume there is a lack of self-respect, a fear of being alone, or an inability to let go. It looks like dependence. It looks like someone who will tolerate anything. Over time, This assumption becomes stronger, especially when the pattern continues. Each time the person chooses to stay, others begin to believe that they will never leave, no matter how many times the situation repeats itself. That perception creates a quiet shift in how they are treated. Their patience is taken for granted. Their understanding is expected rather than valued. People begin to test limits without even realizing it, pushing a little further each time because there is no immediate consequence. The absence of reaction is mistaken for acceptance, the silence is misunderstood as agreement, and slowly the image of this person changes in the eyes of others, shaped by a misunderstanding that never really gets questioned. But beneath that surface, something very different is happening. This is not weakness. It is endurance. It is the ability to hold space for complexity, to process emotions without reacting impulsively, and to give time where most people would walk away. It takes strength to stay calm when things feel uncertain. It takes control to choose patience when frustration builds. What looks like passivity from the outside is often a deliberate choice made again and again with the hope that something meaningful can still be preserved. They are not staying because they cannot leave. They are staying because they believe there is still something worth holding on to. Their patience is not endless by nature, even though it may seem that way. It is extended over time, stretched by hope, and reinforced by belief. Each moment of understanding, each decision to give another chance, comes from a place that is far deeper than simple tolerance. It is a long, quiet process that continues until something within them begins to shift, slowly and almost invisibly. Over time, something begins to shift beneath the surface. The same situations start to feel familiar in a way that is difficult to ignore. Conversations begin to repeat themselves, carrying the same tone, the same promises, the same temporary fixes that never fully hold. Patterns slowly come into focus even when there is an effort to give the benefit of the doubt. At first, these patterns feel small, almost insignificant, easy to overlook in the presence of hope. It seems easier to focus on the good moments, the brief changes, the signs that things might finally improve. At first, they ignore it. They tell themselves it is just a phase, just a misunderstanding, just something that will pass with time. They continue to show patience, continue to invest energy, believing that consistency will lead to change. When the same issue appears again, they begin to question it. The thoughts become a little harder to silence. They start asking quiet questions, wondering why the same situation keeps returning despite all the effort being put in. The answers never feel complete, yet they keep moving forward, holding on to the idea that things can still shift in the right direction. As the pattern continues, the weight of it becomes harder to carry. The apologies begin to sound familiar, almost predictable, and the meaning behind them starts to feel thinner with each repetition. There is a growing awareness that words are staying the same while actions remain unchanged. This realization does not arrive all at once. It builds slowly, layer by layer, until it becomes impossible to fully ignore. The internal dialogue grows louder, even when it remains unspoken. Then they start feeling tired. It is not a sudden reaction, and it does not come from a single moment. It develops over time, shaped by repeated effort and unmet expectations. The energy that once felt natural begins to feel heavy. The willingness to keep fixing, understanding, and staying starts to fade in quiet ways. This is not anger. There is no dramatic shift or outward explosion. It is something more subtle, more internal. A deep sense of exhaustion begins to settle in, replacing the hope that once felt so strong, and it lingers in a way that is difficult to push aside. Then comes the moment where everything begins to shift in a way that cannot be undone. It does not arrive with noise or drama. It happens quietly, almost unnoticed at first. There is always a moment, a small pause in time where something feels different, a quiet moment where something clicks. It can come during an ordinary conversation or even in silence when there is nothing left to distract the mind. In that space, everything they have been carrying starts to come together with a kind of clarity that feels both calm and heavy at the same time. In that moment, they begin to see the full picture without trying to soften it. The patterns, the repeated conversations, the effort that kept stretching further and further, all align into a single understanding. They realize they have been the only one trying to hold everything together. not in a dramatic sense, but in the consistent, everyday ways that often go unnoticed. The constant adjusting, the constant forgiving, the constant effort to keep things balanced starts to reveal itself in a way that feels undeniable. Along with that realization comes another shift, one that changes how they view everything they once believed. They begin to understand that love was never meant to feel like constant effort without return. It was never meant to feel like something that drains more than it gives. This thought does not arrive with resistance. It settles in slowly, almost gently, replacing the hope that once kept them holding on. What once felt like dedication now starts to feel like something else, something that no longer aligns with what they truly need. The emotional weight they have been carrying becomes clearer in that moment. It is no longer hidden behind understanding or patience. It is seen for what it is, and that clarity creates a quiet distance inside them. The urgency to fix everything fades. The need to explain every feeling begins to lose its importance. Something within them becomes still, grounded in a way that feels unfamiliar yet certain. And that is when the person who fought the hardest begins to change. The effort that once felt endless starts to pull back. The energy they kept giving without hesitation begins to return to them. Without any loud decision or outward declaration, something shifts internally, marking the point where the fight they carried for so long slowly comes to an end. When the shift becomes real, the way they leave looks very different from what most people expect. There is no dramatic exit, no raised voices, no emotional chaos filling the room. It happens in a quiet, almost unnoticeable way. The same person who once explained everything, who once tried to fix every misunderstanding, begins to pull back without making a scene. The change is subtle, yet deeply significant. Their reactions soften, their responses become shorter, and the urgency they once carried slowly fades. They do not argue anymore. Situations that once would have led to long conversations or emotional discussions are met with calm silence. It is not indifference, and it is not a lack of awareness. It is a quiet decision to stop investing energy where it no longer creates change. The need to prove a point, to be understood, or to make things work begins to disappear. What once felt important no longer carries the same weight. They do not explain anymore. The words they used to search for so carefully, the effort they put into expressing every feeling, all of that starts to fade away. It is not because they have nothing left to say. It is because they have already said everything before, in different ways, at different times, with the hope that something would shift. Repeating those same words no longer feels meaningful. The explanations that once came naturally now feel unnecessary. They just become silent, not in a cold or distant way, but in a calm and settled manner that reflects something deeper. Their silence carries understanding, clarity, and a sense of closure that does not need to be spoken out loud. The energy they once directed outward begins to turn inward. They start protecting their peace in ways that do not require attention or acknowledgement from anyone else. From the outside, this silence can be confusing. It can feel sudden, even though it has been building for a long time. There are no clear signals, no final arguments to mark the end. Just a quiet withdrawal that speaks louder than anything they could have said. Every conversation they had before, every attempt to make things better, exists within that silence, shaping it into something that no longer seeks a response. When they finally leave, it does not come from a sudden decision or a moment of impulse. From the outside, it may look quick, almost unexpected, as if something small triggered a big reaction. In reality, that final step has been forming over a long period of time. It carries the weight of months, sometimes even years, of trying, adjusting, forgiving, and holding on. Every effort they made, every conversation they had, every chance they gave becomes part of that decision. It is layered, built slowly through experiences that were felt deeply, even when they were never fully expressed. There is a quiet certainty behind their choice, something that feels steady rather than emotional. By the time they reach that point, they have already gone through the questions, the doubts, and the internal debates. They have already considered different possibilities, already hoped for different outcomes, already invested more energy than most people realize. The decision to leave comes after all of that has settled into a clear understanding. It is not driven by a single event, but by a pattern that became impossible to ignore. It is easy to assume that leaving means they stopped caring. That assumption misses what was really happening beneath the surface. They did not leave because their feelings disappeared. Those feelings stayed present for a long time, guiding their actions and shaping their choices. They stayed because they cared, and they kept trying because that care was real. Over time, that same depth of care became something that required balance, something that needed to be directed inward as well. They left because they cared too much for too long without seeing the kind of change that matched their effort. The emotional investment they carried did not fade away suddenly. It transformed into clarity, into an understanding of what they could continue to give and what they could no longer sustain. That shift created a boundary that was not there before, one that came from experience rather than impulse. Once that boundary is formed, it holds a kind of strength that is difficult to break. The same patience that kept them there for so long now supports their decision to stay away. The same depth that allowed them to understand everything now helps them see why returning would only repeat what has already been lived through. In the end, everything comes back to a truth that is easy to miss when emotions are involved. The strongest person in a relationship is often the one who walks away, not because they lacked strength, but because they carried it for too long without balance. Strength does not always look like staying and holding everything together. Sometimes it looks like recognizing when the effort being given starts to take something away from within. There is a point where trying harder no longer creates growth, and that point changes everything. They understand something that many people learn much later. They see the moment when effort turns into self-abandonment, when giving more begins to mean losing parts of themselves in the process. That awareness does not come easily. It is built through experience, through patience, and through every moment where they chose to stay, even when it felt difficult. By the time they reach that understanding, it becomes clear that continuing in the same way would only repeat the same outcome. Choosing to walk away becomes less about leaving someone else and more about returning to themselves. It becomes a decision grounded in clarity rather than emotion, a decision that reflects growth, even if it feels heavy at first. They are no longer trying to fix something that requires effort from both sides. They are no longer waiting for change that has already shown its pattern. Instead, they begin to move in a direction that feels aligned with who they are becoming. Walking away is often misunderstood as giving up. In reality, it can be something entirely different. It can be a moment of waking up, a moment where everything becomes clear enough to make a choice that once felt impossible. It is the quiet realization that staying the same would cost more than leaving, and that realization carries a kind of strength that does not need to be explained to anyone else. Have you ever been this person, the one who kept trying until there was nothing left to give in the same way? Share your thoughts in the comments. Your experience might connect with someone who is going through the same thing. If this made you see things differently, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more content that helps you understand these deeper patterns.